Hello class, and welcome to lesson 6.4a, converting standard and vertex forms. Before we get into doing converting forms from one to the other, we want to do some warm-ups to recap what we've learned before. So just remember that we took a look at vertex form last day, which is y equals a bracket x minus p squared plus q. And based on that form, ladies and gentlemen, we could find many of the important aspects of the parabola. So for example, one aspect is A. It says to state the the coordinates of the vertex. So remember, the vertex equals your P and your Q value from your equation. It then says for the next one to state the equation, the axis of symmetry. That's the vertical line that makes a mirror image on the left side and the right side, and it goes right through the vertex, ladies and gentlemen. And that equation is x equals p that you wrote down from last lesson. To find the y-intercept, ladies and gentlemen, remember we're going to let x equals 0. So wherever you see in 0, you replace it you replace it with a 0. And state which way the parabola opens. That's going to be on your A value. Okay, so if A is positive, it's going to open up. And if A is negative, it's going to open down. All right, so it's based on A. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to answer these 4 questions, these 4 parts with the 3 questions listed down below. Please pause the video now, complete your answers, and then unpause them and check them. Okay, so pause. All right, welcome back, class. Just to make sure we're on the right track, we're going to get started with A. And I always like to identify what my A, my P, and my Q is first. So A equals -2, P equals 0, and Q equals -7. This one, ladies and gentlemen, in A in particular, it's tricky because it's actually in it's represented in 2 forms of the quadratic. It's in vertex form where P is 0, but it's also in standard form where the B value is 0 as well. Okay, so I want you to be aware of that. That one tells you the standard form and the vertex form. All right, so let's answer some of these questions. The first one says, what's your vertex? And you should have 0 and -7. Second one, ladies and gentlemen, says to sub in the equation, the axis of symmetry. So it's x equals p, so it's going to be x equals 0. Third question, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to let x equal 0, so it's going to be y equals -2 times 0 squared minus 7. Use your calculator or do some mental math here, and you're going to get y equals -7. Okay? Or you could have realized, hey folks, this equation is in standard form and the c equals -7. That is the one case. Out of these 3 examples, that's the only one case you could tell me that. All right? And because you're going to say, folks, if c equals 0, you're going to c equals -7, you're going to say, therefore, y equals -7. Okay, you still get the same answer. And the last one, ladies and gentlemen, direction of opening. We're going to say it depends on the A value. So for the last question here, it opens down because, oopsie, because A is negative or A is less than 0. Awesome. Here's the first question. Let's take a look at the second question. So based on the second question, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see A equals 2.5. Okay. You're going to see that P equals 1. And you're going to see that Q equals -3. Okay. So to answer these questions, the vertex is P and Q. So you're going to write down 1 and -3. Okay, and remember, folks, when you're deciding on P, P is the opposite of what you see in the brackets. Or if we go back to the formula, remember, folks, that it's x minus P. So the negative part is part of the formula. So that's not what P is. The negative part is the formula, so that's why P equals 1. Okay, I want you to remember that. That's the tricky one about vertex form. Okay, second one, axis of symmetry. It's going to be x equals P, so x equals 1. third part, finding the y-intercept, you're going to let x equal 0. So it's going to be y equals 2.5, 0 minus 1 squared minus 3. Y equals, plug that in your calculator, ladies and gentlemen, negative 0.5. Okay, this is not in standard form, so you can't be taking a look at just the c value here, because it's actually, there's no c value here. There is a q value. Okay, it's just a special case in A where the q value actually equaled the c value. Okay, the reason why is because there was no bx term. If we expanded this out, there'd be a bx term, and there'd be a constant here that we'd have to collect like terms with. Okay, last part of this question, 4. Take a look at A. A is positive, therefore it's going to be open up. So up because A is positive, or you could say greater than 0. Okay. Awesome! Last question, ladies and gentlemen. A equals negative 4. P equals, be careful here, it's x minus p. There's a plus sign, so how did the negative become a plus sign? It must be multiplied by a negative. So p is negative 1. And q equals 4. Answer our first question. Vertex is negative 1 and 4. Axis of symmetry is x equals p, so it's going to be x equals negative 1. To find the y-intercept, folks, we're going to let x equals 0, so it's going to be y equals negative 4 times 0 plus 1 squared plus 4. Okay, use your calculator or your brain, and you're going to realize that you end up with 0. Okay, last question, ladies and gentlemen. Direction of opening is down because A is negative. Okay, or A is less than 0. Okay, and you might want to put quotations on the X, or on the A, sorry. Don't think I did that for A first, so I'll fix that up too. All right, there's our warm-ups, folks. Now we're going to get into switching some forms of the quadratic, and I'll go over the reason why as soon as we flip the page. All right, so today we need to recall 2 specific forms. Standard form, which is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And that tells us an important information. It tells you the y-intercept. And we get it from the letter C in standard form. So that's why sometimes we're going to switch to standard form to find the initial height of the ball, or to find the initial start value, or the startup cost of a business, because that's going to give you your y-intercept. Okay? And ladies and gentlemen, the vertex form is y equals a bracket x minus p squared plus q. And as we learned the last couple lessons, that tells us the vertex. And the vertex is ordered pair p and q. Now that's what we're going to be focusing a lot on this unit, folks. That gives us the maximum height of the ball, or the minimum value, depending on what type of word problem we're dealing with, but we're talking about the vertex. Okay, and this is important to remember, so please make sure you put this in a box and star it. We switch forms to help us find different components of the parabola. And the different components we're talking about here, you could be finding the y-intercept. Okay, which is in standard form. We could be finding the vertex, which is from vertex form, or we could be finding the zeros, or solutions, or roots, or x-intercepts, and that's from factored form. Okay, that's what we spent a lot of time last unit on. All right, so we're going to start off with the easiest switch I find first, is going from vertex form to standard form. And that's going to be using a lot of the algebra skills we worked on from Unit 5. Look at the steps here, folks. Square a binomial, I remember how to do that. Multiply A by using distributive law, I know how to use distributive property. And collect like terms. Okay, another way, folks, that you can find a y-intercept is also by subbing in x equals 0. So I'm going to show you 2 solutions for example 1. If it asks you to find the y-intercept, that's fine. However, if it says find the y-intercept after putting into standard form, then you're going to have to use solution B. All right, so let's start with solution A. This is most common, folks. When you find the y-intercept, you're going to let x equal 0. So we're going to rewrite this equation, and wherever we see an x, we're going to put a 0. I'm just going to put in a different color here. Okay, so I sub in, replace x for 0, and I simplify this through. So in our brackets, folks, we've got 0 subtract 1 is -1, and you square it as 1. Okay, and y equals -3 plus 4. So you're going to get y equals 1. Okay, that is one way to solve it. However, here's your second way, is to expand. So this is using the steps from above. Okay, so step 1. Actually, I'm just going to rewrite the question out first. And then I'll underline step 1, what we're going to do first. So step 1 says to square the binomial. So I'm going to focus on this part here. Okay, because it's BEDMAS, right? You got to deal with the exponents first. So leave the -3 out front, square that first. So x times x is x squared. Double the product. So 2 times x times -1 is -2x. And then square the last. So -1 times -1 is +1. Okay, and plus 4. Okay, next step, folks, is distributive property, where I'm going to multiply the a by every term inside. This should be pretty familiar to you guys. Okay, careful here. Negative times a negative becomes a positive 6x there. You got to switch the signs. And don't forget your plus 4 at the end. And the last step, ladies and gentlemen, is to collect like terms. So y equals -3x squared plus 6x plus 1. So folks, remember that you take a look at your c value, and that tells you your y-intercept. So y-intercept equals c, which equals 1. Okay, this is a good way to check, folks. So if I ask you to perform one solution, you can choose the other one as a check. All right, now we're going to do the reverse. Now we're going to switch from standard form to vertex form. And we're just going to start this process today, because it depends on what method you want to use in order to do this. There are 3 methods. We're just going to deal with method 1 today. Okay, now method 1 is completing the square. This is going to look familiar to you, where over in the margin you've done the b divided by 2, you found that out, and then you did b divided by 2 and you squared it. So we've had a good introduction to that when we square rooted the method. We did the square root method of solving in last unit. However, I'm going to show it to you in a little bit different of a format than what you've seen. So this part will be the same. The difference is we're not going to deal with a constant term on the other side. The reason why, folks, is we want it to be in the form, which is vertex form, y equals a bracket x minus p squared plus q. Okay? So what we want to do is have everything on one side. So instead of taking the constant term to the other side, we're going to leave it all on one side. Okay? So here's an example of what we're going to take a look at, and then we're going to do one together. Okay? And take a look at how this looks like. Okay. So in the example, and I have this in a different format where I've already completed it for you. Hopefully the color value works out for it. Okay, step 1 is to factor a out of the first 2 terms. The reason why we're dealing with the first 2 terms and not the third is, remember, we need to get that binomial squared to look like x minus p squared, and the 7 isn't a perfect square, so we can't include him, so that's why he just stays at the end, and we're going to factor a out of the first 2 terms. Okay, so a is factored out because in the formula, guess what? A's out front. All right? So we factor a to the first 2 terms, okay? And then what we're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is again off to the side, we're going to take our 2, which is our b, so b divided by 2 equals 2 divided by 2, which equals 1, and then we're going to square it. So 1 squared equals 1. So that's the number in the past we had added to both sides. But since we're keeping all the terms on one side, you have to do things a little different. You're going to add and subtract it in the same side. That's the same as if I took this -1 out and I put it on the other side, it's going to be the opposite sign. So that's why you're going to add it and then subtract it. All you need to remember, folks, is that the first three terms make your perfect square, because you can take the square root of plus 1, but you cannot take the square root of minus 1. So we're going to group the first three terms all together, but you got to be careful here. This negative 1 is in the way, because he's not part of the perfect square. So we've got to bring him out. But when we bring him out, we've got to multiply him by a, because he's affected by what's in front of the bracket. Think about the distributive law. Okay, so when you bring him out, that term out, you're going to multiply it by a. There's always going to be a constant negative term that you're going to bring out, and you always have to multiply it by a. So negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Okay, and that's because it's the effect of a, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, and then, ladies and gentlemen, you do the same thing here. You complete the square and collect like terms. Remember, we've got your perfect square here, ladies and gentlemen. Take the square root of the first, which is x. And if you're not sure, folks, go to your margin. You've got your value here of plus 1 squared plus 4. Or, folks, do the old school way. What's your product that equals 1? What's your sum that equals 2? And the two numbers have to be the same. It's going to be 1 times 1. So when you factored that out, it's going to be 3 times x plus 1 times x plus 1. Okay? And then that's going to be x plus 1 squared. Okay? I'm going to erase that because I think most people understand the shortcut method. But again, that's where that's coming from. Okay? And don't forget at the end, you're going to collect like terms. So negative 3 plus 7 is positive 4. Now, folks, this is in vertex form. You've got y equals a bracket x minus p squared plus q. Looking at that, that tells us some information. So since the vertex is, so your p and q value, be careful here, p is negative 1, right, and q is 4, okay? And a is what value? Is 3. This tells us that we have a min or max value, guys. A opens up, so this is a min value, because a is positive, so it opens up. Okay, of, look at your max, look at your vertex to find that of 4. So your max value is out at the constant leftover when x equals negative 1. Okay, so it says that we will learn method 2 and 3 next lesson. Okay, so let's try one more example of this, folks, before we get into something completely new. Okay, this is going to take some practice, so I want to make sure tonight in your homework, or today, or whenever you're doing your homework, folks, that you take some time to do this. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, without sketching the graph, determine the maximum or minimum value of the function. So first things, ladies and gentlemen, looking at our equation, we can decide if it's a max or a min because we're taking a look at a. So we know a equals negative 2, therefore it opens down. Okay, so if it opens down, we're going to have a maximum. So we have that part already figured out. Okay, and in order to do that, we need to get the vertex, so we need to convert to vertex form. So therefore, need max, therefore vertex form. Okay. So we're going to complete the square just like we did up above, okay? Want to make sure you guys, when you're doing your homework, ladies and gentlemen, in the past, you know how we would try to common factor or divide every term by 2 or negative 3 or whatever we could. And when we're doing completing the square, we're not doing that because we've got y on one side. So you can't divide through. In the past, when we were solving in the other units, folks, that side was 0. So you could divide. So please make sure you understand that there's no factoring or dividing by terms right away. Okay, so let's take a look at our steps here. Step 1 is to factor a out of the first two terms. So it's going to be y equals negative 2, so get the a out front. It's going to be x squared, watch your sign, plus 10x. And again, that negative 47, he's not part of my perfect square, so I'm taking him out. All right. Next step, ladies and gentlemen, is, again, we want to get a binomial squared inside the bracket, so we've got to find that third and magic term. So you're going to go b divided by 2, which equals 10 divided by 2, which equals 5. And then don't forget to take that b divided by 2 and square it, which equals 5 squared, which equals 25. That's the number we're going to add and subtract into the bracket. So I'm going to leave some room and I'll put it in a different color so that you can see that. So just give me a second with that. Okay, so you add it first and subtract it second. Add it first because the first three terms we always want in order to make our perfect square. Okay, all right. So taking a look, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to complete, actually let's just get those three terms together. Okay, now we want to deal with this extra term, which is the negative 25. Remember, when you bring him outside of the brackets, you got to affect it by, it's affected by a, so negative 25 times negative 2 is plus 50. Okay, and then minus 47. Okay. Now we're on to our last step, folks. We're going to do two things in the last step. First of all, we're going to change this trinomial into a binomial squared. Take the square root of the first, the sine of the second, and square root of the last. Or you can look up here, folks, and you've got it right there. Okay, collect like terms. We are going to have 50 minus 47, which is plus 3. So, folks, my vertex in this case, I always like you to do your vertex, is negative 5 and 3. And if I asked you for your min-max value, which I did, it's the Q, and this is when it occurs. So, therefore, we have a max of 3 when x equals negative 5. Okay? All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you something new. Okay, are you ready? Last page, and I want you to make sure you study this for test. So can you please put down here, study for test? Because in the past, I've noticed people have kind of forgotten about this concept. It's an important one, and we need to make sure we know how to do this. The question says, how can we determine the equation of the parabola in vertex form if we're given a vertex and a point? Well, if we're given a vertex, for example, in A, we know that P equals 0. We know that Q equals 2. And it says it passes through a point, negative 3 and 11. So in vertex form, ladies and gentlemen, we have A, P, and Q. So if we know the P, we know the Q, we still need to what? Find A. That is the key about this. We're going to have to do some searching to find A. What we can do, folks, is if we're given an ordered pair, we can sub that in as an x value being negative 3 and a y value being 11, and then we can find A. After we are done, after we have subbed that in, the only variable left to solve is going to be A, so you're going to solve for A. Then the last step is to put A, P, and Q into the formula. So let's take a look here. So this example is partially done. Okay, so step 1 says in vertex form is the equation, so we will sub in our values for P and Q, okay, which are given to us by the coordinates of the vertex. So step 1 is to sub in P and Q. So we subbed in P and Q, okay. Notice what's left in our formula. Okay, step 2, we are given a point, so we have an x and y value to sub in. And so we're going to sub in x equals negative 3 and y equals 11. Okay, so what we did here is sub in point xy. Okay, and after we do that, folks, look at this equation. The only thing left here is to find A. This is where we got to step in and do some work because we got to solve this. So leave 11 on the left side. We're going to simplify this out. It's going to be A times, what's negative 3 subtract 0 is negative 3. You square it, which is 9, plus 2. So we have 11 equals, my fault, just fix that. So 9 times A is 9A plus 2. And we're gonna rearrange for a. So we're gonna take the plus 2, bring it over. It's gonna become negative. So we're gonna end up with 9 equaling 9a. How do you get a by itself? Divide both sides by 9. So a equals 1. Now that we've solved for a, ha ha ha, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, I was supposed to do it here. So just put that stuff down here, or put an arrow that we did it up there. Okay. And then once we've got a solved, now we can sub our values in. So just to recap here, folks, a equals 1, p equals 0, and q equals 2. So we're going to sub it into the formula here. So we've got y equals x minus 0 squared plus 2. And you might want to put 1 in to begin with. But we don't leave it like that. We're going to simplify it. So y equals x minus 0 is just x, so it's going to be x squared plus 2. All right, here's a case, folks, where it's in both standard form and vertex form. All right, now let's try it on your own. Okay, see if you can do this on your own. So I would recommend that you use this example above, pause the video, and see if you can do this all on your own. So pause the video. Okay, folks, welcome back. Hopefully you realize that we need to get things into vertex form. Hopefully you've done this example independently. Okay, step 1, folks, is to sub in the vertex. So sub in vertex. Okay, so I'm going to put that in a different color in just a second. Okay, so our vertex in the given question was p equals 0, so you're going to put 0 down, and q equals 2. Okay, you can choose to simplify here first, or you can sub in after. I'm just going to simplify this, because x minus 0 is still x squared. So we've got a times x squared plus 2. Okay, now next step is to sub in the point. Which is 2, 9. Okay, so instead of y, I'm going to have 9 equals a times 2 squared plus 2. Okay. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. 9 equals, 2 squared is 4, so 4 times a is 4a plus 2. Let's get the plus 2 over to the other side. So we're going to have 7 equals 4a. To get a by itself, divide both sides by 4. So you've got a equals 7 over 4, or, ladies and gentlemen, 1.75. We tend to like it as a fraction. Okay, so now we can sub it in. Therefore, first of all, we got a equals, I'll just put it in here, a equals 7 over 4, p equals 0, and q equals 2. Therefore, let's sub it all in. So we've got y equals 7 over 4, bracket, x minus 0 squared, plus 2. And please simplify that, ladies and gentlemen. So y equals 7 over 4, x squared plus 2. I would also accept, ladies and gentlemen, y equals 1.75 x squared plus 2. All right. And ladies and gentlemen, here's your homework. Page 314, numbers 1 to 3, 7 ACE, 8 ACE, 10 AC, and 13 AF. Please practice the completing the square method, because tomorrow we're going on to 2 other methods, and they are different than completing the square method. And again, there's a new style of completing the square method where you leave all terms on one side and you leave y on the left side. Okay, folks, have a great day and see me for extra help. Namaste.